Hey all, this is Reddit Tears of the Kingdom is going to have craftable weapons, and I don't think that's a question anymore. I think it's pretty much a certainty. The most recent Tears of the Kingdom trailer really put the nail in the coffin for me. So in this video we're going to take a look at all the evidence in favor of craftable weapons, and I'll explain why I think it's so likely. In the trailer there's a short clip of what I believe is a craftable arrow. The clip shows Link taking aim at a flying enemy. The arrow he's using seems to have a balloon at its tip. Link infuses the arrow with the new green magic energy that we've seen elsewhere, and then he fires. The arrow then changes direction mid-flight, homing into the enemy. Now, it's possible that this is just Link using one of his new powers. After all, doing this does seem to require him to infuse the arrow with his magic green energy. But I don't think that this is something he can just do with any arrow. I think this is a craftable item, and he'll have to use his energy powers in conjunction with these new craftable arrows. I think that because if you take a close look at the balloon at the tip, it's not a balloon. It is, in fact, a Keese eyeball. If you go into Breath of the Wild right now and look at the back of a Keese eyeball, it looks identical to this balloon. And with the way this arrow works, that makes perfect sense. It can home into enemies because it's an eyeball. It can see them. Now, if this works the way I think it does, then that has some pretty awesome implications. It means you'll be able to craft a variety of cool arrows using monster parts. And if we're lucky, maybe we'll be able to craft arrows to do several things at once. For example, maybe we can also make the arrow be explosive. A homing and explosive arrow sounds pretty awesome. I can potentially see it getting very powerful. But it also looks like it's going to have limits, because Link did have to use his magic energy on the arrow before firing it. So I suspect that certain craftable arrows will use up some kind of resource that Link has a limited number of before they have to go on a cooldown. Anyway, let's move on. In an older trailer, you see Link fighting some kind of cave worm thing, and he has what looks like a Zonai dragon head attached to a wooden shield. In the clip, it's clear that Link is blocking at that moment. The Zonai head has glowing green eyes and has a glowing part of its mouth. It then starts emitting flames from its mouth. It's a flamethrower. After shooting the flames, Link does a backflip, and at this point it becomes clear that the eyes in the Zonai head and its mouth are no longer glowing, which implies that either this equipment is on a cooldown, or that Link will have to continuously infuse it with energy to make it able to shoot again, and that infusion will likely be on a cooldown instead. In this shot, it becomes very clear that what Link is holding is in fact just a wooden shield, a really crappy looking wooden shield at that. It's not some special equipment that is part of the Zonai head. I think what's most likely is that he crafted this flamethrower shield with what he had available. Alright, let's look at the most recent trailer again. In this clip, Link has a large two-handed weapon. This weapon also has the Zonai dragon head motif. When the clip begins, there are glowing runes visible on the weapon, and its eyeballs also seem to be glowing slightly. Link then does a front flip, which allows him to fire the weapon, which turns out to be a cannon. After the weapon fires and Link completely hits the ground, you can see all of the glowing parts of the Zonai weapon immediately stop glowing, again implying that either the weapon is going on a cooldown, or Link will have to reinfuse it with his green energy. Now the most interesting thing is that the cannon part of the weapon is connected to the handle via this very interesting symbol. And we've seen this symbol before. This symbol was shown in a previous trailer, at the center of this Zonai robot enemy. It looks identical to the back of the dragon head's cannon. So it seems obvious to me that these dragon heads are monster parts from specific Zonai enemies, and that when you get them from those enemies you'll have to craft them into weapons. This cannon is attached to a handle, and if we could look behind the dragon head on the flamethrower shield, I suspect we would see the same symbol at its back. It would be at the place where it's connected to the shield. Okay, so there's strong evidence for craftable arrows and for craftable Zonai related weapons. But now let's look at the evidence for all the craftable regular weapons. This evidence is a bit more circumstantial, but I think it's still convincing. So first of all, I think that crafting is going to be the main way that you acquire weapons. If you look at a lot of these screenshots, many weapons you see on screen have been corroded by malice. It's possible that this is just going to be how they showcase the durability of the weapon. It'll give you a visual cue to how much longer the weapon has left. But I suspect that what's actually happening is that the weapons that enemies are using are going to be just generally worse than what you can craft, and that they'll be worse as a way to encourage you to engage with this new crafting system, with these malice-tainted weapons either being weaker or have a lot less durability than the weapons that you'll be able to make. Okay, circumstantial evidence number 2. All of the enemies' horns have been redesigned to look like weapons. I think it's extremely likely that we'll be able to take these horns and use them in crafting weapons, in a manner similar to what we saw with the Zonai Dragon head. And better yet, the higher tier the enemy, the more impressive the weapon looks. The red bokoblins have a single spear-like horn, whereas blue bokoblins have a horn that splits off into a fork. Actually, this horn is extremely similar to the forked Lizzle spear, which makes me think that the bokoblin horns will in general be used to make spear weapons. The Lizzophos, on the other hand, have weapons in the shape of a curved sword. Their horns will likely be used for one-handed sword weapons. The boss bokoblin has on his head an axe or perhaps a halberd. Since he's a bokoblin, maybe halberd is more likely. The red moblins have a bony cap, which perhaps means they'll be used as shields, and the blue moblins have twin horns on their sides. Maybe that'll be for two-handed weapons. The Hinox has his horn behind what looks like wood and rope, so you can't really get a good look at it, but it's interesting that he has it hidden behind stuff, because that makes me think that either the horns will be a weak point, or that you'll have to damage them in some way to get them off of the enemies. Something in the vein of Monster Hunter. I'm probably overthinking it, I doubt they'd go that far with this system, but at the moment I can't think of another reason why the Hinox would have it hidden. Now that's all the evidence I could think of in favor for craftable weapons. This was actually one of my most desired features. In a recent video I made, I described something that's kind of close to what we're seeing. So since it was something I really wanted, it's possible I'm seeing what I want to see here. But I really don't think so. I think it falls very much in line with everything else that we've seen in Tears of the Kingdom. We already know that the game is going to feature craftable vehicles, and from the looks of it, crafting them seems quite in-depth. It looks like there's going to be a lot of ways to mix and match them to make them unique. It looks like the kind of thing where you can get really creative. And given that, craftable weapons and what that entails seems like a very natural extension of everything else we've seen so far. I'm pretty sure that I'm right, but I'm sure it'll be more obvious whether I am or not when we see what the next trailer has to offer. Anyway, that's the end of this video. As always, thank you very much for watching.